Hello, I've been asked to put a presentation together about building a sense of belonging and community using online spaces. Now, this is obviously a huge problem, and building a community just in a regular space, in our regular buildings, is tough in itself. So it's even harder when it's remote. So I'm going to talk about a few tips about building it through using webinars, through discussion forums, and through the design of activities. So firstly, my background is running some online courses. We've currently got an engineering management MSc running in the Faculty of Engineering, which I deliver with the colleagues Gerard Duff and Lisa Dion Morris, and also with the DES team. So I've also been involved in producing MOOCs. So it comes from that sort of lived experience rather than research, if you like. So tips from actually doing it over the last few years. Firstly, I wanted to share the way we have been as a team building our webinar structures. So this is an indication, just an illustration rather, of 1 hour. So this is something I've taken from Chris Evans, the broadcaster, who used to draw around a CD to plan out each hour of his radio shows. So this is 1 hour. If you can see at 12 o'clock, there's 60 minutes, you know, going clockwise from that blue arrow. So the first five minutes, we generally have a social time. You know, people are logging in, getting used to the audio, making sure everything's working. So we have a few bits of welcome, and I'll show you a few slides that we use in that area. The next 10 minutes, we deliver a bit of context, maybe about what this webinar is about, showing people the structure of the webinar, maybe using an illustration like this. The other space on there, particularly the large green section, the sort of 20-minute segment of that pie chart, if you like, that's our group work, and we get people into group work for as long as we can. This is a completely online, 100% online course. So this is their opportunity to really meet each other and socialize and build that sort of community. So we try and give as much time as we can for that space. So that 20 minutes is split up into group work. We take our time splitting people in. We make sure people know exactly what's going to happen once they get into these collaborate workrooms. So we give clear guidance. We share a PowerPoint slide into that room so they know what the question is and what they should be working on as a team. We scaffold that group work as much as we can, try and get round as quickly as possible who's going to be the note taker, because we're going to want people to bring back what they've discussed in those groups, those small working groups, back into the main area of Collaborate. So we've got some ways of bringing that information back, and we'll talk to you about that. Collaborate can do that, but we've got some other ways of getting people to collaborate, bring that work back into the main space. The next 20 minutes, the light blue section, is the group feedback. So if you've got a lot of groups, maybe 20 groups, then you can't all feedback because it takes at least 2 or 3 minutes for each group to feedback, even a very succinct presentation. So it's important that when they bring back the information, they can bring it back in a form that maybe if they don't present it, at least they can take away and use it. And we'll talk a bit more about that shortly. In the sessions, we're very clear to give some real rules about how we want people to engage. So how do you want people to behave in your session? How do you want them to participate or just keep quiet? You can establish these rules. So, you know, muting the mic, they're all fairly obvious things, but do encourage people to participate. We use this kind of a welcome slide within those first 5 minutes, that sort of socialization space. And this is to basically give people an indication of where people are in the world. It might be just across the UK. It might be a different question, but actually it's just getting people to put their name on there. This is where they live, the time zone they're in. It's quite a nice way of socializing, particularly for us because people are all across the globe. Other slides we've used is something like this. You can put as many questions or as little questions to target what the students might add to this slide. So using the whiteboard format, this is what they're using. So they're drawing on using the whiteboard format, like with the world map. So in this, it's quite interesting because don't forget these whiteboards, they're not just PowerPoint slides anymore. These are interactive slides. So people can actually put their comments on there if you want them to. And it's not just for feedback to us, but also feedback to the students. So how much of Unit 1 have you completed? Let's give them an idea of where they're at in that particular unit of work. When did you do the work? Things like that. And you can put questions on there, whatever you'd like. This is just what we've used. This has been a great slide. It was created by Dr. Gerard Duff, who's one of the co-deliverers of this module. And this one's been really useful. We used it in every single of our webinars, and it's really just, you know, where are you up to in your mind in terms of the materials? Has it been too challenging? Has it been easy? Is this relevant to you? So people can put their names on this chart and interact, and you can find out where people are. Gives you an idea of where the learning is, you know, is up to in your particular section of the module. We use slides like this that just encourage people to populate. So very simple, an open slide of space so they can actually contribute. Another one, very similar format, just one page, a good question, and then actually find out where people are at. It's really fantastic, this kind of stuff. So this is an example, this slide here is an example of a slide that I've seen used in an online conference. So we were given 4 blank spaces on this particular, the slide in the top left. So we were to fill in our thoughts on positive thinking, critical judgment, you know, feelings, intuition. And actually there was a note taker who prepared this and actually put these notes into these sections for the whole group. That worked really well. Another example of exactly the same conference was this group was asked, you know, here's the 4 spaces again, positive thinking, critical judgment. But actually each member of the group was asked to just chuck in, just put on the whiteboard what you're thinking about in these spaces. And quite magically, these sort of comments appear when you're in something like Collaborate. You know, might have 100 people in the group, you might have 5 people in the group, but they can all drop their thoughts in and then they can talk to it. It's a really great space of getting interaction and engagement. And this is how I see you can build engagement and a kind of community and a belonging in this webinar format. We've also used Padlet, another great space. So don't be afraid of using tools outside of Collaborate, outside of Teams, you know, direct them towards a space they can collaborate. And this is being populated by a group giving their answers to a particular question. You know, give us your top 5 tips for successful innovation. Very simple question, but actually it developed a great deal of thought. And then we could share this Padlet group, you know, space when they came back to the main room and capture what they were thinking. So in summary, you know, for webinars and discussion forums, I just wanted to give a summary at the end of this. You know, if you're planning group activities in webinars, here's some tips. So this is a live and interactive opportunity. So be human. It's a synchronous time. It's one of the few maybe synchronous times that students will get during this remote working time. So use it and be yourself and be human and make mistakes or make it fun, whatever you want to do. But encourage participation. These are ways of doing it. If you provide the title or the subject ahead of the webinar, then people are going to have a chance to find out, you know, about what they might be talking about. They're more readily prepared to participate because they're more knowledgeable and ready. So you could also suggest reading or you know, flip it and research ahead. We all know about doing these kind of techniques. It involves quite a bit of planning. So what we've done in our 6-week online module is plan every single webinar for those 6 weeks, what we're going to ask, and how that relates to the different learning activities and assessments. So if you can plan these questions and also the feedback format we've talked about ahead, then that's a fantastic way of getting engagement. And also if you show that these questions and learning activities, the group work is going to relate directly to assessment. You know, if you can link that through as a thread, it takes a bit of sort of backward designing and planning, but that's a great way of getting people to engage, is make it, you know, purposeful. So also plan your use of external software. This has been really important to get that engagement, to make sure it's an easy thing to do in these digital spaces. The next summary is about the discussion forums. So discussion forums I haven't spoken about too much, but these have worked really well in our online space, in this online module, and that's maybe because it's an online, 100% online space. I must say I did have discussion forums in my face-to-face areas in Minerva, and I didn't find they were working at all. They would just get populated by 1 or 2 people. I'd put a question, nothing would happen. So I was a bit nervous of this, but it's worked really, really well. And there's been a fantastic amount of work done and learning generated, a discussion generated in these discussion forums on Minerva, but with this online module because it is run through Minerva. So why would students do this? You know, they may be expecting a staff response, you know, us to participate. You've got to think about how much time you've got and when you might respond to these things. So I've put a note there, you know, how much should students write? So 200 words doesn't sound like a lot, but if you've got, you know, 20 or even 50 or 100 or 200 students, they're generating a lot of text. So you've got to think about how much you're going to read, how much you're going to participate. And maybe you're not, maybe you're just going to use the students to do that. There's also a great thing, you know, peer pressure. Actually, if you put something on, then what you need to do is read 2 other people's work and then comment on their work. So there's kind of a sharing going on, a peer pressure to actually produce something so you can share. and comment. The students are thinking, what am I going to get out of this? And this is, a couple of areas I can suggest where you can say, what's in it for me as a student, and to get real engagement. One is, allow some personal input. What are their thoughts? Allow them to test their understanding and get their peers to help them with that, testing their understanding as well. So that's really important, I think. But also the critical thing, and I spoke about it with the webinars, is if you can link these activities to assessment. So again, maybe a bit of forward planning with this new remote way of working, make it more active learning. So, plan ahead and explain the purpose. Actually, if you could complete these discussion forum sections, you can then use what you've been thinking about that and use it in your reflective log. You're building a piece of work through engagement in the webinars, in the group activities, through engagement in putting things in discussion forums, and then you can use that later on as part of an assessment. And that's been a really great way to get that active involvement, we think, because it has worked really well. So thanks for listening. I hope this has been super useful, and you've picked at least one or two tips that you might be able to take forward into your work. This has been recorded using a Teams meeting, so I simply invited myself to a meeting, and then it can put the picture at the bottom if you're interested in that. It just records it, you can record it, and it sends you a link when the meeting is finished. So it's a great, simple way of working. So there's my Twitter handle. Please do get in touch, and I've got a website there. And if you want to find out any more, please do email me. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for listening.